So sleep is the fundamental layer of mental and physical health. If there's one thing that we should all be doing is sleeping long enough and deeply enough.
What's the biggest risk then if we're not getting enough sleep? Hey guys, thank you so much for being here. A quick message before we dive in. You may be watching the show, but haven't taken a moment to click the subscribe button below. So if you've ever gained value from this show, it would mean so much to me if you click the subscribe button right now. And not only will this allow you to see these messages first, all this great content we have, you're gonna get notified first when it comes out. But the bigger our subscriber base grows, the more people we can impact and the bigger the guests we can get on this show as well. So again, thank you so much as always for your support. It means the world to me. Make sure to click the subscribe button below and let's dive into this conversation.
Until you are sleeping long enough and deeply enough, 80% of the nights of your life, you are functioning suboptimally.
And what's the biggest risk then if we're not getting enough sleep?
Okay, so there are a number of risks to not getting enough sleep. Deficits in learning, deficits in the immune system, reduction in testosterone and estrogen in both men and women. So disruption of hormones, disruption of gut microbiome, increased cancer risk. There are a bunch of things. The severity of those things depends on a lot of other things too. Prior health, other health conditions, context, age, occupation. You know, if you're not getting enough sleep and you're a high-rise construction worker, it's different than if you're an office worker. Okay, so we need to sleep enough. Now, what's enough sleep? This is an interesting question. Enough sleep has been argued it's 6 hours. Other people it's 7 hours. Other people it's 8 hours. It's basically waking up without an alarm clock and feeling rested. Insomnia is actually a medical term nowadays. And insomnia is essentially diagnosed as falling asleep during the middle of the day due to lack of sleep at nighttime. But many people who are having trouble sleeping at night are not falling asleep during the middle of the day. They're dealing with grogginess or crankiness or other effects of having fragmented sleep.
What are the main causes of not being able to fall asleep? Is it rumination? Is it traumas that you're holding on to? Is it arguments? Is it self-doubt or insecurities? Is it you nap too much? Is it the foods you ate too late? Like, what would you say are the main causes of not being able to fall asleep?
Yeah, all of the above. But the primary one is a failure to turn off your thoughts.
Okay.
And I think that might provide a good anchor point for us to talk about some protocols. Really, a excellent night's sleep begins in the morning. I talked about this on the previous episode, so I won't go into detail, but everyone should get as much bright light in their eyes, ideally from sunlight, first thing in the morning, 10 to 30 minutes outside, depending on how bright it is. Eyeglasses or contact lenses are fine. Don't wear sunglasses if you can do it safely. If you wake up before the sun rises, turn on bright lights, then go outside once the sun rises. If you have no access to sunlight, use a daytime simulator or similar, like a ring light, and get that light in your eyes.
Okay.
So that's all of that in a compact form. Caffeine. You can inhibit falling asleep with caffeine. You have to figure out when your threshold is. For me, I can drink caffeine up until about 3, even 4 o'clock in the afternoon and sleep like a baby.
And still sleep well.
Yes, and Matt Walker, our good friend Matt Walker, would say that my sleep isn't as good as it would be had I cut caffeine out earlier.
By like 11 or 12 a.m.
Right, and I want to acknowledge, Matt is the Michael Jordan of sleep science, and so I'm not going to...
You're the LeBron James.
No, and in fair, thank you for the compliment, but no, I'm not. I know a lot of the science and the protocols, but that's Matt's wheelhouse, and so if he says something, it's true, and if I say something and our opinions conflict, it's likely to be something that the data are still emerging, or in that case, default to Matt being correct, because I just out of due respect for his expertise. So caffeine, for some people, they can have a 2 o'clock espresso, 2 p.m. espresso. Some people it's 4 p.m. Some people can drink caffeine at 8 p.m. and fall asleep. But there I would say it's problematic because you're disrupting the architecture of sleep and the brain waves associated with sleep, the chemicals and so forth. So get that morning light. Cut your caffeine off at the time that allows you to fall asleep. That morning light also sets a timer on your melatonin rhythm. So you have this gland in your brain called the pineal gland. That pineal is the source of melatonin. Melatonin makes you sleepy, but it does not keep you asleep.
Okay.
Melatonin starts to rise in the late evening and continues into the night and then eventually tapers off. This is naturally occurring melatonin release, not supplemented melatonin release. The fastest way to slam melatonin to the pavement and eliminate it in your system is to look at bright light for, I hate to tell you this, even a few seconds. So,
you mean at night?
At night is typically when melatonin rises.
Yes.
It's when it's released in the bloodstream and when it has this effect of making us sleepy. It does a number of other things
You
too.
want more melatonin at night, is that right?
You do. And
Yes.
if you wake up in the middle of the night or it's 8 o'clock and you decide you want to go to bed at 9, or it's 9 o'clock, you want to go to bed at 10, and you go into the bathroom and you flip on the bright lights, your melatonin levels just got crushed down to
So
zero.
having lights on is the worst thing you can do.
Yes, and it doesn't matter if it's blue light, red light, purple light, green light. Bright lights inhibit melatonin very acutely, and therefore you want to avoid exposure to bright lights at night if your goal is to be asleep. So the simple rule that governs all this stuff is when you want to be alert, get bright light in your eyes, ideally from sunlight. So that's true in the morning and throughout the day. And when you want to be sleepy or asleep, avoid bright light in your eyes. Now, many home environments don't allow you to have zero lights, and that's not actually necessary. You can just dim the lights in the evening. Ideally, you also avoid overhead lights because the neurons in the eye that trigger this melatonin suppression and so forth, they reside in an area of the eye that views upper visual space. So you could have desk lamps or and just dim those down. If you're going to work on a screen, dim it way down. Will blue blockers help? Yes, but if the light is bright enough,
It's still going to go
you're
through.
still going to inhibit melatonin release.
So how bad is watching TV at night?
If the TV isn't too bright and
If it's farther away,
farther
it's not
away,
like right in your...
yeah, and maybe you wear blue blockers.
Yeah.
And or I mean, some people take this to the extreme. They wear sunglasses. I think that's a little extreme. Now, candlelight and moonlight, surprisingly, doesn't seem to block melatonin. Now, maybe a really bright moonlit night, full moon, the lunacy associated with the full moon might actually be due to a suppression of melatonin and an increase in alertness. So those are the things as it relates to light.
Yes.
Then there's this issue of people who have trouble staying asleep. So they can fall asleep fine, but they wake up at 2 or 3 in the morning. I happen to do this. If I go to bed around 10:30, I tend to wake up around 3 and I use the restroom. Yeah, I tend to drink a lot of fluids and I have to use the restroom. This was true at every age. This is not just some aging related thing. That's fine. I just keep the lights dim and you use the bathroom and then you go back to sleep.
Fall back to sleep.
Very normal, very healthy. One of the best things I ever did for my sleep was to keep my phone out of the room so that when I wake up at 3 in the morning, I just didn't start scrolling the newspapers is typically what I would read online.
Gotcha.
And then you're just waking up your brain, not just by the light, but by the content. And,
You're activating it again as opposed to going back to sleep.
Exactly. And sometimes there's a comment and they're like, why is it, your thinking is not very good in the middle of the night. The other thing is you want to keep the room cool. So in order to fall asleep, your body has to undergo a drop in temperature of 1 to 3 degrees. There are a couple ways to accomplish this. One is keeping the room cool. The other is to, and that's ideal actually, because you can put a hand or a foot out. We actually lose a lot of our heat through what's called our glabrous skin, so the palms of our hands, the bottoms of the feet.
I always put my feet out of the sheets and just let them feel the cool air.
That's right. And that's a great way to cool off your core body temperature. You're probably doing that unconsciously in your sleep as well. If the room were too warm, the only way for you to cool off would be for you to put your hand in a bucket of cold water. And generally people don't have that accessible.
And then you're going to go pee if you're doing that too.
Right, exactly. And then of course there are all these products nowadays of, things that cover, that cool the bed. I'm supposed to try one of these soon. I haven't tried one yet. I tend to just keep the room cool.
Cool, yeah.
And
what do you keep it at? I keep it around 67, 65.
That's a little cooler than what I do. I put it at about 67, 68.
Okay.
But I tend to wake up hot in the middle of the night, like throw the comforter off, and go put some cold water on my face.
Wow.
So don't obsess over waking up too much. And if you do, try and stay away from screens. Or if some people will read a book, dim light again, and then falling back asleep. Some people are waking up at 2 or 3 because they are going to bed too late. their melatonin has run out. So imagine that you're naturally somebody who should go to bed early, around 9, but we all have this ability to push forward and stay awake if we have to. Much easier to stay awake than to force yourself to go to sleep early.
Yes.
Very hard to force yourself to go to sleep. So let's say your system, you start releasing melatonin around 9 p.m., but you stay up until 11. Then you get into bed, you fall asleep around 11:30, and at 3 in the morning you suddenly wake up. Well, that's because your melatonin tapered off and there's a wakefulness that's occurring. And so ideally you would start going to bed earlier. Now, there's a lot of discussion out there about so-called chronotypes. So night owls, morning people, people that follow a more typical schedule. Typical would be going to sleep somewhere between 10:30 and 11:30, waking up somewhere between 6:30 and 8. Then there are the people that like to go to bed at 2 a.m., sleep till 10. And then there are people that like to go to bed at 8 and wake up at 4. Huge variation out there. It tends to change across the lifetime.
Yeah, your season of life for years.
That's right. And adolescents and teenagers tend to stay up later and want to sleep in. And there's actually some evidence that they can learn better if they are allowed to use that schedule, but most schools won't adhere to that schedule.
You gotta wake up at 6 and go to school at 8 or whatever. Yeah.
Once you enter adult life, you're generally somebody who's gonna have to learn how to go to bed early and wake up early, or at least wake up early. Now, naps, you should feel comfortable. The data say naps, you should feel comfortable napping for 90 minutes or less at any point throughout the day, as long as it doesn't interfere with your nighttime sleep. So some people like me, I love naps, but it doesn't interfere with my nighttime sleep.
It doesn't.
Does not.
So you can take a 60-minute nap.
Generally 20 to 45 minutes.
And then you fully fall asleep, or you're kind of like awake and just resting?
Yeah, I can fall asleep anywhere, anytime.
In like
I can
a
fall
minute?
asleep at a gun range. Yeah, it's
What?
It's in.
Can you sleep sitting up too, like this?
Oh yeah, plane.
That's a gift.
Anywhere.
That's a gift.
It is, although it could reflect that I'm pushing my system a little too hard.
Oh.
But it is useful at times.
Incredible, man.
It
So
is
you can fall
useful.
asleep right on a plane or...
Anywhere, leaning against a
gosh.
in a subway station and anywhere. Yeah. If I need sleep, I'm going down.
That's incredible.
Yeah. So the other thing is that during sleep, a number of things happen, and we can talk about slow wave sleep and REM sleep. But one of the most important physiological functions of sleep is to clear out some of the cellular debris that accumulates throughout the day. The cellular debris creates cognitive deficits. It actually may be related to the aggregation of proteins and things that relate to dementia and Alzheimer's. It's the so-called glymphatic system. The lymphatic system is a system of moving through immune cells and clearing out of debris from the body. The glymphatic system is a kind of a equivalent system that exists in the brain that involves so-called glial cells, which are support cells, but also do many things actively. They're not just doing support. The glymphatic system is like a washout of the brain's debris. And that system seems to function best when feet are slightly elevated above the brain. There's some interesting data from University of South Carolina coming out now that show that if you can get your ankles elevated a little bit higher than your chin, that's great. So
When you're sleeping?
While you're sleeping.
What's it do for you?
It increases the glymphatic clearance, and there's some data that it can improve function of the brain. The studies that are happening now that I'm aware of, I'm in touch with that group, are mainly geared towards people that have had head injuries, so concussion and TBI of various kinds, but they also are seeing interesting effects in typical folks that don't have any traumatic brain injury. So I put a pillow underneath my ankles when I fall asleep, and to get a little bit of that elevation. And then during the day, if ever you can't get a nap, or you are going to get a nap, put your ankles up on the couch and lie down on the floor. That itself can get some of the clearance of the glymphatic
And that
system.
helps you sleep better, or it helps you just clean out the system?
It helps your brain function better when you wake up from sleep.
Interesting.
Yeah. That's what the data are starting to
That's
show.
cool.
Some of the things I described, like the light viewing, is baked into the neuroscience literature, hundreds of papers, published papers. Some of the things like the glymphatic system is kind of cutting edge. It's on the way, but because the safety margins of raising your ankles are so large, I mean, there's nothing dangerous about that.
Sure.
How
long do you need to do it for to get the benefits?
Oh, I think these are immediate benefits
Like
because
2 minutes or 10 minutes?
Oh no, you're doing this the whole night that you're asleep. Your ankles are elevated. If you wake up and you happen to kick the pillow out, it's not the end of the world. But the idea is that you don't want to be sleeping with your head above your ankles either. There is some evidence that when people travel on planes and they're sleeping in chairs, that's not equivalent to the kind of sleep they'd get when they're lying flat.
Interesting.
Independent of all the other things that are happening. And we know this because there are great sleep labs at Stanford, School of Medicine, at UPenn, back east, and elsewhere, where people actually go into a clinic and sleep either upright or at different angles.
Track it.
And they're looking at all this at the level of data.
Okay, so here's one for you. What's the best position to sleep? On your back, on your side, on your stomach?
Great question, and it really truly depends. And it probably depends on how hot you run. So I tend to run really warm. A lot of the cooling of the body occurs from the palms and bottoms of the feet, but also from the upper back and scapulae, because we accumulate what's called brown fat there. It's not the blubbery fat that's under the skin.
Right.
It's like a furnace. Actually, you can increase the density of brown fat by going into cold water repeatedly for 1 to 3 minutes several times each week.
Yes.
It means your furnace actually burns hotter. It allows you to be in cold temperatures more comfortably. Some really beautiful data just published on this. So I don't like to sleep on my back because I start heating up.
Start sweating.
That's right. So I tend to sleep on my side. I sleep in that, what is that? It's like soldier position. You know that?
Yeah.
But then again, there's some people that have shoulder issues and then they can't do that.
Yeah.
I'm relatively flexible through my shoulders, not super flexible, so I can do that. It really depends. Now, of course, if you're sleeping on your stomach, how do you elevate your ankles? You know, it starts becoming a little bit of, we are not just science experiments. And so you have to assume that you're not going to get everything exactly right. But keeping the room cool, keeping the cool being under a warm enough blanket, but then extending a hand or an ankle out so that you could cool off during the middle of the night, that's going to be good. Keep the room dark, although complete pitch black doesn't seem to be as good as having a little bit of light somewhere in the room. Okay. But you don't want a bright blue light or red light anywhere in the room that's going to wake you up. Some people like me have very thin eyelids, exceedingly thin eyelids. Some people have very thick eyelids. So some people are more bothered by a light in the room than others. It really varies. Yeah. So you have to just tune things to your particular environment.
I'm curious about the neuroscience before you go to sleep. How do we set our minds up to, you were saying before about, a lot of people, it's hard for them to sleep because they can't shut their mind off.
Right.
Is there something we should be thinking before we shut it off to set our sleep up for success mentally, and then to really build into the next day where we wake up feeling like clear-minded and without this brain fog, where we have more motivation, where we have more energy and excitement towards the next day, and then doing that in a pattern every night? Is there any science around that? Is it like listening to a hypnosis
that could be very helpful,
which will help you clean out whatever is going on through the day and get clear and ready for the next day, but also fall asleep so you're not thinking about it? Is there anything that can help you have better dreams so that you sleep better? Like, what have you found there in the neuroscience?
Yeah, so so glad you asked this question. There's some really interesting data from a guy named Charles Zeisler, who's at Harvard Med. He's done beautiful studies on sleep in humans for many decades, and a really fantastic physician and researcher. And they observed something interesting, which is that about 90 minutes or so before your natural bedtime, there's a spike in alertness, planning, and almost anxiety that all people undergo, and it's a normal, healthy pattern. The idea, and it's a just so story because we don't really know, I nor Chuck Zeisler nor anyone else was consulted at the design phase, as we say, but we assume this came about because prior to going to sleep, we need to shore up everything for safety. We need to lock things down, make sure everything's in its place because we are very vulnerable in sleep. Nowadays, this might manifest as, you need to go to bed at 10:30 because you have to get up at 6, etc. And then right around 8:30 or 9, you start finding yourself running around doing various things. Many people worry about that and they think, I'm really stressed because I actually need to go to sleep and here I am wide awake. It tends to subside very quickly. So just the knowledge that that's a normal, healthy spike in alertness and activity, I think can help a number of people. I want to make sure I mention that.
Yeah.
The other thing is preparing the mind, as you said, turning thoughts off. Turning thoughts off is a skill. We've talked before, almost a year or more ago, about Yoga Nidra.
Yes.
Which is, there are many, many Yoga Nidra scripts available on YouTube, free of cost. The ones I particularly like are the ones by Kamini Desai, Kamini Inidesai. Kamini Desai. I just really like her voice. I don't know Kamini, never met her. These are free scripts. They're Yoga Nidra scripts that last about 20 minutes. They involve some breathing, some meditation type stuff. But they teach you to turn your thoughts off, which is really wonderful. Because a lot of people, they just get stuck in this rumination. Now, is there an ideal protocol prior to sleep? It depends, because some people find they have their greatest clarity after the kids are asleep and they're sitting there. So I wouldn't say don't work or do work. You do want to avoid strong stimuli before sleep. So do you really want to watch, a politically charged or a violent movie right before sleep? Well, that depends on how triggered you tend to be by politics or violence. Some people aren't triggered, other people are.
Yeah.
But that aside, you don't want to go to bed either too hungry or too full, because that can inhibit your sleep.
Think of all the amazing things in life that are expressions of just you. For instance, the song you stream over and over again while you're in your 13th hour of gaming at 4 a.m. in the morning, with all the lights off, trying not to wake up your roommates. Or the recommendations that you share with your friends on the top 6 comedy podcasts that are the best to listen to on your way to the gym and back. Or even your new haircut, which may or may not be an epic bowl cut from the 90s, and hopefully is. Everything that makes you, you, makes all the difference. State Farm believes insurance should work the same way. Your plan, your coverage, they need to be personalized to you. And the ability to choose the plan you want by picking the options that fit you, like building your home and auto policies, is exactly what the State Farm Personal Price Plan is all about. Getting the coverage you want at an affordable price just for you. So, are you ready to make things personal? Call or go to statefarm.com today to create your State Farm Personal Price Plan. Prices vary by state. Options selected by customer, availability, and eligibility may vary.
You can change. There's so much cool stuff that we can do today. You got meditation, you got journaling, you got, Tai Chi. You know what I'm saying? There's all this stuff you could do. Playing board games. There's that cool, have you played the Heads Up?
Oh yeah, it's great.
Right?
It's great.
So you've got all these cool things you can do to hang out with your friends, spend time with your significant other. How do we fit it all in? Well, you don't have to do everything, or you can do each thing in a micro way. But so for me, my current evening routine is, number one, just kind of the hallmark thing for me is giving myself some tech-free time before I go to bed, before I lay my head down. At least 30 minutes. Yeah. We all can do this. And Harvard researchers have confirmed, I talked about this, and I pushed this in the culture like the last 5 years hard. So if people have heard this, you know where it came from, all right? I've been really working to get this out here. And we've got them right here, man. We got the new iPhone. It's got 3 cameras.
Sick, dude.
It's fun to play
It's amazing.
with, right? But this device is the greatest deterrent for our sleep quality today.
So bad.
And so Harvard researchers confirmed that the light exposure, blue light specifically, and white light, that kind of shoot out from our devices that we can't really see if we're sitting here and there's this light around us, this ambient light. But if you're in a dark room and you see that phone, it's like emanating like this bluish alien light, right? And so what they found was that this light does in fact suppress your melatonin secretion and dramatically increases cortisol. And they got numbers on this. So what they found is that approximately every 30 minutes you're on your device at night, you suppress melatonin. I'm sorry, I said it wrong. Every hour you're on your device at night, you suppress melatonin for 30 minutes. Oh. All right? Every hour you're on your device, you suppress melatonin for 30 minutes. So if you're on your device 3 hours, melatonin suppressed for 90 minutes.
Wow.
Right? And so again, even though you might be unconscious and go to bed, and you're not aware anymore, you're not going through your sleep cycles efficiently. So that's what it's really about, is optimizing our sleep cycles. Yeah. And we do that with the way we live our lives. And so just to go back on that point with me, just
so 30 minutes at least, no phone.
Yeah, at least. Ideally, we want to see more like 60 minutes,
60,
if possible.
90.
Yeah, I mean, then we're like,
that's
but
like
we get into that place of like, what do I do though?
You read a book, you hang out with your friends, you go to bed.
Some people just aren't trying to hear that, man. You know what I mean?
So that's no phone and no TV?
Yeah.
So no, you can't watch your show or your movie. You can't.
Here's a couple of hacks, and I'm sure a
put
lot
the
of people know
glasses
this.
on,
You got the blue light blocking glasses.
Yeah.
You've got blue light blocking apps for your phone. Like it's built into the iPhone now. You know, and folks who have Android, they have like night shift. I'm sorry, what is it called? Twilight.
Yeah.
Is another thing. I believe that's what it's called.
Okay.
You know,
So there's some things you can do.
yeah, so there's things that you can do to kind of reduce that experience. And for many folks, and I know myself included, I definitely do feel like sometimes even it's a neuroassociation. Just putting the glasses on, I would get sleepy. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Just by
You
putting the
start to feel
glasses
it,
on.
like, okay,
yeah. Chilling out.
Yeah.
Or we can also, dim the lights around us. Maybe even change some bulbs, a couple of bulbs in your house. Candlelight, that's sexy. You know what I'm saying? So you just change, and then we evolve with those kinds of lights in the evening, those tones, right? These kind of warmer colors. And so that's what I do. I give myself a 30-minute curfew, and I really love to just kind of take some time, hang out with my wife, we'll talk, I'll do some reading. This is when but we've got, it's a light dimmer.
Yeah.
Light's a little bit dimmer. I'll do at least probably 10 minutes of reading, 20 minutes sometimes, if we're not, spending some time together. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we have that. And then for me, I love if I get a chance to do a magnesium bath in the evening. So this is a big one, man. So magnesium has been found to be responsible for over 650 biochemical processes in the body. Many of them related to relaxation and sleep. All right, so magnesium is needed to contraction and relaxation of your muscles. So the relaxation response of your muscles, like if somebody's cramping, that kind of thing, magnesium helps a lot.
Wow, okay.
Right? So, but also it relaxes your nervous system. So it helps to shift over from your sympathetic fight or flight nervous system. Magnesium helps to shift you into the parasympathetic rest and digest part of your nervous system.
Yeah.
And so people have been doing this for centuries. Like Epsom salt baths has helped to improve sleep and relax sore muscles, help you to heal faster, all that stuff. It has some credence. Now we got some supercharged magnesium salts and
Really? So you do this almost every night?
No, a couple times a week. You know what I'm saying? But
even once a week could be good.
Yeah, what I have the topical magnesium spray. Wow. So I use that almost every night. So I'll just massage, rub that in, and that's another thing that you could do too. Get a massage. All right, if you can,
Before sleep?
From your significant other, or self-massage. There's even acupressure points, and I talk about this in Sleep Smarter, because I'm very analytical in how I think. I'm like, you could touch a point, and but there is some evidence that this, they did this in a hospital, and so what they did was manipulate this acupressure point, and they saw higher levels of melatonin metabolites in their urine by manipulating this pressure point. So it's doing something with melatonin.
Right.
So, but with massage, you produce endorphins, serotonin, right? So this all helps with that relaxation response. I don't know anybody that's ever gotten a massage and gotten up. It's I'm so ready to fight now. You know what I mean?
Right. You just want to chill for another few hours. Yeah.
That's it, man.
Okay.
So if I can, my wife, I'll massage her feet, or if she wants to massage my feet, that's so great, man, by the way. Or I got a little tennis ball, and I'll just put that on the floor and rub that around on my feet, the bottom of my feet. So there's another couple things. And so some of these things are not as consistent. Consistent things for me is screen curfew, reading, time with my wife, and magnesium. Those are my things.
And no food at a certain time, probably, right?
Yeah, I don't even think about it because I'm nourished and I don't have a hungry brain. So if I eat, we finish eating at 7 or 8, whatever it is, I feel good. I don't need to jam any food before bed. But the other thing I do as I'm walking into the bedroom is I turn the thermostat down.
Make it cold.
Yeah, and we've talked about this before.
Yes.
And so
69.
Yeah.
That's what I keep it at, man, every night.
Yeah.
It's so good.
It is, and this goes back to that evolutionary process, evolutionary biology. We have a natural drop in our core body temperature at night, 1 to 2 degrees.
Yeah.
And what the theory is, because again, a lot of stuff we don't know specifically why, but is that our body uses a lot of energy to try to keep our temperature up. So by bringing that down a little bit, more energy is being dispersed to do things like memory consolidation, like detoxification of your brain via the glymphatic system, there's a changing of the guard that happens in your gut microbiome. All this energy is needed to bring you back better, right? And so if your environment is too hot, no matter where you live on the planet, whether if it's like Chile or it's, Antarctica.
Yeah.
It gets, well, that might not be a good example, but during the daytime and during the nighttime, the temperature is different.
Yeah.
The temperature goes down a little bit at night, no matter where you are. And so if you artificially keep it high, your body's gonna kind of be trying to fight to bring itself down. So help it a little bit. Today we do have access, a lot of us, to regulate our thermostat.
Yeah.
At least, like during this time of year here in LA, like you can get down, 50s and 60s, like you can just open a window.
Yeah.
And so, so that's what I do. I turn the thermostat down or turn the heat off if it's been on all day.
Sure.
Yeah.
Amazing. So that's your evening routine.
Yeah.
I love it, man. What else do we need to know about sleep? We've talked about sleep sanctuaries and making sure you have the snake plants and all these other things. Do you still do the snake plant?
I have not we just moved, so I haven't gotten my whole thing optimized,
sanctuary.
except like we got some blackout curtains because when you came to my house, like we were out in the woods.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Dark.
It was dark.
You don't need blackout.
Right?
You got.
It was like, maybe a little moonlight, but that's our bodies, we evolved with that. That's a natural spectrum of light, and the lux is so much less than what's beaming out of your telephone or the sun. But now, we're like in a neighborhood. So I got some blackout curtains again. But something else that I think people would be interested in is still the buy-in. Like, why does this matter? Why should I be looking at optimizing my sleep for 2020?
Yes.
Like this is a new decade. This could be the best decade of your life.
But it's also with all these opportunities and work harder mentality and be more productive, you're going to get less sleep, less quality sleep if you have that mentality as well, right?
Yeah.
If you're like, so many opportunities, it's a new decade, let's crush the decade. That type of thinking could make you hurtful in sleep, right?
When you said crush, I immediately thought of Gary Vee.
Of course.
And he's like the guy everybody seems like, he's out there just dominating. His thing now that he's out talking about, he gets 7 hours of sleep a night.
Yeah.
I talked with him maybe 4 years ago. We're having dinner. And this is Beard Gary Vee.
Yeah.
I don't know, he did his little moment of beard.
Yeah.
And I was just like, inquiring like, hey man, so what's with your health practices? Like you're trying to play the long game, you're talking about buying the jets. How you gonna do that if you're
dead?
Yeah, if you're dead.
If you're dead.
D-E-A-D, dead.
Yeah, exactly.
So what he was like, he's hired a trainer
Yeah.
to travel with him because he knows himself to keep him accountable on that end, and he gets his sleep despite what people think, right? And so just keep that in mind. The people that you're looking at and the people that, even the ones that are saying, sleep is for suckers, I promise they're sleeping. I promise.
They gotta be.
You can't operate, and also they might not be sleeping enough and they're not reaching their full potential. You know what I mean? So be very careful about that, because what you want to do, you don't want to just execute. You want to be the very best version of yourself to get up and execute. You can accomplish so much more when you feel well.
I think I saw Steve Harvey talk about, he mentioned something. I think he said sleep. Sleep is for those who are broke or something like that.
Yeah.
Did you see this?
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
I think he said something like that.
I don't know if that was Steve. It might have been him. Yeah. Was
he
that
said
him
this,
that said that?
He said this recently, or I saw a video came up about a month ago where he's like, sleep is for
broke people.
For broke people or something like that, where it's like, you got to work harder than people if you want to make money, right? You got to spend extra hours and things like that. But
again, like I know a lot of these people, man, who have these messages, and even, another really good friend of mine, and yours too, Eric Thomas, right? He's another person, out there. But he shared this.
And he's like, I wake up at 4 a.m. or 5 a.m.
But he goes to sleep early. Like we've been hanging out for a long time.
He's sleep at like 8 p.m. or something, right?
He's knocked out, all right? But he's getting up and grinding, right? When he's up, he's trouble. So his thing is, get enough sleep, but don't sleep in. Don't oversleep. Don't be lazy.
Yeah.
That's the difference. It's not don't sleep. That's killing yourself. And you're not showing up as the best you, as we kind of gone through today.
Is there too much sleep?
Absolutely, yeah. We can, and I know that many of us have experienced this where maybe we sleep longer than normal and we're tired. Like we're super tired when we get up and we're like tired for a while. And a big part of that is just kind of even how we're interrupting our sleep cycles, But that's a, really unique conversation.
What is the optimal amount of hours for most people who live busy lives, who are pushing the envelope on work, family, activities? They're doing a lot of things.
Yeah.
They're trying to fill it all on their plate. achieve their goals and do everything, what would be the optimal amount of hours of sleep for those types of people?
I'll tell you right now that 8 hours is not enough for some people. All right, for some people it's 6. For some people it's 7. For some people it's 9. It depends, man. It's the answer that nobody wants to hear because these so-called experts are like giving people these cookie cutter answers like you need to get 8 hours of sleep. I think that's wildly negligent to tell people that because you can become neurotic about something that you don't even really need. What it really boils down to, if you're getting 8 hours of shitty sleep, for me, I liken sleep minutes to calories. Like today, most people are well aware that it's not just the quantity of calories, it's the quality of those calories. Yeah. For same thing, it's the quality of those sleep minutes, not just the quantity, right? So you can get like, if you're looking at, what did I mention earlier? A chocodile, right? Versus wild-caught salmon or, Lewis's salad. Is there a name of the salad?
I should call it
Lewis's
the Great Salad or something. Because it's a custom bowl. It's the greatness bowl.
Yes. The salad of greatness.
Yes.
So a chocodile versus the salad of greatness, it's going to have wildly different impact on what it does to your metabolism, right? And so the same thing with your sleep minutes. You can be getting like 8 hours of chocodile sleep because of your blue light exposure, because of you not tapping into thermal regulation, because you having issues with blood sugar regulation, and listing goes on and on and on, some of the things we talked about. Or you can get an incredible optimized version of that sleep that only takes you 6.5 hours, where you're going through your sleep cycles efficiently and you're waking up feeling like a beast, right? The answer is it depends. The quality of your sleep and who you are and what you're doing right now. Yeah. Because there are times in your life when you've had to sleep more,
Absolutely.
right? If you're like, somebody's training for whatever, your body just needs a little bit more sleep. Maybe you're under a lot of stress, whatever the case might be, it's gonna change. Now we have to honor our bodies. Obviously, I'm a big fan of routine because your body's always looking for routine. But when you're up, life is dynamic, like things are gonna happen. And so I allow myself to change my sleep schedule a little bit, and I try to stay within a nice framework. But if something's going on, and I know that I'm stressed, man, I really need to back off. I need to recover. I don't need to push it down more. And this also just comes with experience too.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So that I can wake up recovered and get back on my grind. You know what I mean? And so, but just a little quick thing that I want to share with people, that's another big buy-in point, is that our sleep quality affects our appearance, right? Specifically, nobody's waking up like, I just want to be super ugly today. Like as ugly as possible. You know what I mean? I want to scare children. You know what I mean? And there was this really cool study that was done recently. So this was just in 2017. And the Swedish researchers, and what they did was they had study participants take a picture after a full night of good sleep. And then they had them take a picture after sleep depriving them, where they're getting about 5 to 6 hours of sleep for 2 days. All right, so they sleep deprive them for 2 days, take their picture again. There's a mixture of pictures that these raters, the people who are rating all the people's beauty, and what they did was they looked at all the different pictures, and this is looking at what's happening in our brains, just again through evolutionary biology. When we see people, we get feedback.
Yep.
And what the scientists were wanting to do was to find out, does sleep deprivation cause a hesitance to want to be around somebody?
Wow.
All right. And so what the raters found was that when people were sleep deprived, they were deemed to be less attractive. They were deemed to be less healthy. And they also decided, I would be less interested in socializing with this person. Okay.
Wow.
Just in 2 days of sleep deprivation. And another study by Swedish researchers found that just 5 days of sleep deprivation, just getting less than 6 hours of sleep, led to 45% increase in fine lines and wrinkles in the face. It aged you very quickly. But the good news is it reverses, not as quickly.
It rebounds.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's called beauty sleep. Why don't we talk about this more?
It's true.
You know what I mean? It's called
That's
beauty
true.
sleep for a reason. There's real rejuvenative magic in this.
In sleeping.
You know what I mean? And so looking at how we feel about other people and how we're showing up in the world, your sleep has a big impact on that.
And tell people about sleep debt. You mentioned this before. If you've gone 25 years of just horrible sleep, Can you oversleep for 20 years?
25 years, that's a long time.
A few years, 5 years, 10 years. If you've been bad in your 20s and you've been partying late nights and you're a promoter and you get horrible sleep every night, can you rebound and put more sleep in that bank debt and recover?
And the way that we think about sleep debt, it doesn't work like that. The good news is, again, this kind of goes back to the conversation about telomeres. Once we change our habits and our practices, you can do things to start to reverse that aging process in some aspects, right? By lengthening those telomeres, by doing good things for your body, which includes getting more sleep. So you burning the candle at both ends or burning the telomeres at both ends, you can reverse that process. Okay. That's the good news.
That's good.
Now, in the context of sleep debt, so if you're just sleep deprived for, just say you're going like months at a time, getting, 4 whatever hours, your incidence of heart disease is skyrocketing, heart attack, stroke, diabetes, all this stuff is going up. Chances are you're not gonna make it very far. Some people, even people listening, are like, well, I'm fine. You gotta be careful about that. Now, that sleep debt is a lot to pay back. If it's like a day or two, maybe 3-4 days at the most, and you kind of catch up, maybe on the weekend, that can be helpful. But it's still like you're not getting back as much as you're taking out, if that makes sense.
Before the interview continues, if you feel like you're not living your most authentic life, not leaning into your purpose, and not living the life that your future self would be extremely proud of, I've written a new book called The Greatness Mindset, and I think you're gonna love this. Through powerful stories, science-backed strategies, and step-by-step guidance, The Greatness Mindset will help you overcome all the different challenges in your life to design the life of your dreams and then turn it into your reality. Make sure to click the link below in the description to get your copy today. Okay, let's get back to this video.
Why is this important to have a room, pitch black so you can't even see your hand?
Awesome, yeah. So again, so that normal sleep cycle, just helping to support that. And your skin has photoreceptors that pick up light. And
even the littlest amount of light.
Yeah, there was a study I put in the book that the room was otherwise pitch black, but they put just a tiny light behind somebody's knee.
No.
And it was enough. Yes.
Shut up.
It was enough to take them out of their normal stage of sleep. It's crazy, right? It's crazy. And so, because again, we've evolved in darkness, and it's not all light, it's unnatural light. Like moonlight, if you look at the lux, and I put a lux chart in the book, it's not even a problem, but that unnatural light. And so your skin has photoreceptors that pick up information and basically send it to your brain to secrete more daytime hormones, namely cortisol. All right, so your neighbor's porch light, street lights outside, that kind of stuff, this unnatural light, it's been dubbed light pollution now. So getting your room pitch black can keep that stuff out of your room, but also the internal light too. So if you've got an ugly alarm clock staring at you, that kind of stuff, you might want to consider, getting a dimmer shut off or, throwing a blanket over it or something like that.
I like that. Okay. That was actually number 6.
Got it.
So this is number 7. Let's see. Train hard but smart. Number 7. Yeah. What does that mean?
Awesome. Well, I think a lot of people know that a good workout can help you sleep. However, there's a difference between going to sleep and passing out, as we've mentioned. So a lot of people, I talk with Rich Roll, and if he doesn't do one of his, he's like running for days,
It's crazy.
If he doesn't do one of his workouts, like he says, his sleep isn't the same. And it's because of his cortisol rhythm, which he's changed, but that's a whole nother story. Bottom line is there's a difference, number one, between going to sleep and passing out. And here's how to do this the right way. So this study done with Appalachian State University, they broke exercise up into 3 groups. Group A exercised at 7 a.m. in the morning, Group B 1 p.m., Group C 7 p.m. at night. Group A spent up to 75% more time in deep anabolic sleep.
Earlier in the morning.
So early in the morning, if you can get a workout in, it doesn't mean it has to be the time you hit the gym. You can work out in the afternoon, but that initial morning activity is important because going back to our evolutionary biology, it encourages that normal cortisol spike.
So getting up and taking a walk.
Yeah, you could do a power walk. You can do a 4-minute Tabata session, do some body weight stuff, or you can do your full workout.
Air squats.
Yes.
Some yoga, stretching, whatever it may be.
You're helping to encourage that
movement.
normal cortisol.
First thing in the morning.
Yeah.
The first hour or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting. And then what about the full workout? What about if you're like, okay, I'm going to do my hour workout today. When should that optimal time be?
If you want to do it in the morning, perfect. If it is and there wasn't much benefit to the afternoon as far as sleep is concerned, but in the evening there was some benefit. But it has to be the early evening. All right,
So
because
if I do work out in the evening, it's okay.
if it's the early evening,
Like
so
6, 7.
you need about 4 hours. So if your planned bedtime is 11, you need about 4 hours for your cortisol to get normalized and your core body temperature to come back down, which we talked about how important that is.
Yeah, because I'll work out and then I'll take a cold shower, but I'm still sweating an hour later.
Yeah, but
You know
cold
what I mean?
shower is a great help though,
Yeah.
to help to lower your core body temperature.
But
as
still,
well.
the
Yeah,
burn is just
exactly.
like,
Yeah.
a big guy. Just
Yeah.
You're still sweating, so that makes sense. Okay, so 4 hours after the workout, you should take before you go to sleep.
Right. And some people are like hitting, their jujitsu class at like 8 p.m. and then trying to get to sleep at 10. And
That's not optimal.
Yeah, it's not.
But it is good. You still get benefit if you go up till 7 o'clock or 4 hours before.
Right.
It's okay.
Just try and time it different. A lot of times that we get in issues with this is because we tell ourselves there's not another option.
Right.
We're infinite beings that
Yes.
have plenty of different ways that we can change things.
Gotcha. Okay. I believe that was 7. Okay. So number 8, use smart supplementation. What does that mean?
Ooh, man, this is a great chapter, man. This whole working in a clinic, people would sometimes see me like allopathic treatment. Like, what can I take? So I'm having problems with losing weight. What can I take for that? What can I take for my sleep? And that sent me down a path of research and some stuff. And some of the stuff I found it didn't feel good. One of the first things and the biggest supplement for sleep is melatonin. We talked about melatonin a lot already. Just because you could buy it at a natural food store doesn't mean that it's okay.
Not all melatonin is made equally. Is that what you're saying?
No, not that. This is a hormone, man. This is a hormone. Like you're taking a hormone. And so I cited a study in the book that right now, and there's a lot more being done on this, but right now what's seen clinically is that taking melatonin supplementation decreases the function of your melatonin receptor sites. So they start to downregulate. Basically, your body stops being able to use it. No, you can produce it, but your body won't be able to use it.
Oh.
All right, so
like taking
sites.
creatine, where you like take so much creatine back in the day, and then it stops using it because it's
something like that.
Overload of creatine
Something
or
like
something.
that.
Okay,
but yeah, man. So
you shouldn't be taking melatonin.
Ideally, not consistently, and this is coming out. Dr. Michael Bruce is somebody I mentioned in the book, board certified sleep specialist and really smart guy. And he's recommended people to back off the melatonin. But I say everything has a place. Everything has value. If you're changing time zones, if you're wanting to just kind of for a short term to help to set your normal sleep cycle, it can be okay. But getting that dependency on it and using too much, the amount that's in a normal, just everyday supplement is way too high.
Right.
And your body will start to downregulate. And so what do people do? They'll take more. So melatonin is not the way to go. The ideal way is to start with things that are natural first, things that have a storied, long lineage of use to the human body. You can start as simple as chamomile tea, can be really helpful.
Sure.
Clinically proven to be effective. Kava kava is another one. That's the national drink of Fiji, which Tony Robbins always come to mind when I think of Fiji. But it's been shown to be a mild sedative, as well as valerian. So these are 3 options. Then we can get into the chemical isolates, which I would do that later. But 5-HTP is effective. L-tryptophan. 5-HTP is a precursor to melatonin. So it gives your body the chance to do a step still and produce it versus you taking the end product and lowering your ability for your body to actually use it.
Gotcha. Wow, that's powerful. Okay. So that was number 8. Number 9, go easy on the bottle. What does that mean?
So this is one of the funnest chapters of the book, and wow, just some of the.
I'm assuming you're talking about alcohol.
This is alcohol, yeah.
What about my late night glass of wine or going out to the bars and drinking until I'm passed out? That's not going to help me sleep better?
So here's what's so interesting is that the research shows that drinking alcohol before bed does in fact help you to fall asleep faster. Hands down, no doubt about it.
Yeah, it passes you out, right?
What also has been found is that you're not getting into normal REM sleep in particular. Your sleep stages are broken. This is why you wake up with what's known as a hangover, all right, because it's interrupting your sleep cycles. So you're passed out. You're physiologically sleeping, but your brain isn't doing the right processes.
Why not?
Right? The alcohol interrupts those so one of the things that I mentioned earlier, and I didn't want to get into it, but adenosine, which we talked about in the book in regards to the caffeine. All right, so adenosine is this end product from your body. It's producing this compound to basically nudge you to go to sleep. And caffeine sits in the receptor sites for adenosine So you don't really know you're tired, even though you are. All right. Alcohol does something similar to that. So it makes you feel tired, even though physiologically you might not be ready to go to sleep for some people. So this has a lot to do with it, with the impact with the adenosine as far as alcohol is concerned. And so it does work, again, to put you to sleep, but getting good sleep, not so much. One of the other things that was fascinating about writing this chapter was looking at how similar sleep deprivation is to being drunk, and actually seeing right there statistical correlation between, yes. And when you see this, man, the National Highway Patrol and all of the deaths that occur every year due to people falling asleep or driving while drowsy is shocking, because there isn't an easy test for that, yes, as there is with testing with blood alcohol. And there was a great Mythbusters episode that I talk about in the book that actually showed, wow, like you can actually be even worse off if you're sleep deprived.
Of course, if you can't open your eyes.
Exactly, right.
I mean, you know, I'll wake up sometimes and I'll feel like drowsy and sleep deprived. I've never been drunk in my life, so I don't know what the feeling is. Yeah. But I think a few nights ago I woke up, you know, I was coming back from an international trip for 2 weeks, so I was just waking up at 3 a.m. and it was just all off. Yeah. And I woke up and I remember just like walking around the room, like hitting the wall, and I'm like, man, I feel so drunk
Louis,
right now.
that's what drunk is. That's what it feels like, man.
I don't know what it is. You know what I mean? So I can only imagine, you know, when you don't have a stable footing and you're just like, where am I? Yeah. That's interesting. So
yeah, but there are benefits to drinking, especially like you mentioned, drinking wine. You know, red wine, the resveratrol. There's a lot of great benefits. It's just, how about we go for a happy hour, or how about you give yourself the opportunity? I talk about how
almost
to do
like
this
4 hours before you sleep, kind of like that.
A couple, even two, and drink plenty of water to help your body to essentially flush it out. And you know, when you're drinking alcohol, well, you don't know this, but you tend to go pee a lot. Your body's trying to eliminate the poison. You know,
sure.
And so just encourage that, you know, just by drinking, getting really hydrated, and just giving yourself a couple hours before you go to bed. It's really that simple.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. So that was number 9. Number 10, let's do early to rise. Be early to rise. Why?
How about let's do the get grounded, since there's a correlation.
Let's do it. Get grounded.
This was the way your book kicked off, right?
Yeah.
And this is the way that mine wraps up.
I like it.
And it means psychologically, but also physiologically. And wow, this was some of the most fascinating research that I got to dig into. And I got to talk to Dr. Jeff Spencer, who's he's been on your show, right?
Yeah, he has.
Yeah. So, and he's directly connected to like 40 national championships, Olympic gold medals, Tour de France victories combined, you know, all together with his coaching and his being a team physician for the Tour de France, for example. One of his leverage points and his kind of secret sauce was through utilizing grounding and earthing equipment. And so what is this? So getting grounded basically means getting your body connected with the Earth's surface. And again, me being very analytical, I'm not, you know, I don't like to get too unicorn, you know, but respect to that, there is some of that relevant in the world, but I want to see the science. Like, I want to know how it works. And so the Earth itself is brimming with free electrons, okay? And so your body is really operating off of this interesting combination of protons and electrons for events to happen. Yeah. So positive event in your body is an inflammatory event, basically. And you need inflammation to get better, you know, to grow, right, to develop. Inflammation is actually good, but we don't want it to go too far. Bringing an electron molecule into an inflammatory process, because what happens today is people are having too many inflammatory overreactions, right? So this is like autoimmune condition where your body's doing too much. Yes. And bringing an electron in basically neutralizes that inflammatory event. So one of the things that's seen is when you get grounded, and there's so much cool research on this, inflammation goes down. Your parasympathetic nervous system kicks on, right? And so there was a study done, and this was a Journal of Environmental and Public Health, and I cited this one in the book, that found that as soon as you get grounded, instantly your parasympathetic nervous system is turning on and your sympathetic nervous system is turning off. So what are those? Parasympathetic is basically your rest and digest system. Sympathetic is fight or flight. And most of us are chronically in this. It's a binary system. It's either off or on. You're not a little bit sympathetic. So getting grounded immediately does that. And why does that work? Human body's conductive, you know, like it's not some magic. Right now, if somebody might be listening to podcasts, matter of fact, I'm gonna use a different example. Scary movies, right? One of the worst ways to go out is like you're taking a bath and here comes Freddy Krueger and he throws an electric device in the bathtub.
Yeah.
Right?
That would suck.
It sucks, right? Because we're conductive. We can be electrocuted because we're conductive. We can electrocute each other just with static electricity. It happens every day. You're very, very conductive. So that should help to kind of buffer that disconnection of like what's going on. You just can't see the electricity, the electrons coming from the ground, but they're there. So conductive surfaces are mainly like grass, dirt, soil. Concrete is a little bit conductive. Asphalt is not. Bodies of water is why we feel grounded and ideas come in the shower.
Yeah.
All right, because those pipes are grounded.
Sure.
All right. Sand, things like that. So getting your body in touch with those things. And this is why people feel so good when they go to the beach. They feel relaxed. They get better sleep. Yeah. Some people fall asleep at the beach.
Of course. Yeah, absolutely.
Because your body's actually it's setting the circadian timing is getting back on track. So that's one thing. And also getting grounded. And this was so cool that I saw this. Clinically proven. And so let me preface this. So what Dr. Jeff was using was grounding equipment. So this is equipment that basically connects to the grounding prong in your outlets, and it's basically like sheets that align with this particular material that sends that energy basically to the human body. And so there's grounding mats, like I think you had one. I got one for our buddy John Lee Dumas that he uses all the time. I have a mouse pad, there's grounding sheets, there's all this other cool stuff that basically connects you to the electrons that the earth is emanating. And so there was one study that I cited, getting grounded using this equipment. Number one, it lowered nighttime cortisol. So they monitored the person all night, the people all night long in the study, lowered nighttime cortisol, all right? And also it helped to normalize cortisol during the daytime. So they're not hyper fight or flight just by getting yourself grounded.
Right.
All right, so super powerful stuff. The inexpensive way to do it, which it helps if you're in California, it's so great to be. I was shoveling snow the day before I came here, but it's easy to get grounded. What other places, depending on the time of year, can be a little bit more difficult. But I encourage you to explore. If it's a little chilly outside and you've got a patch of grass in your backyard, still get out there, roll up your pants and do that. Or you can get yourself some of the earthing equipment that I talk about in the book.
Awesome. If someone who has a horrible diet, they eat horrible, they smoke, they drink occasionally, but they get 8 hours of sleep versus someone who gets 5 hours of sleep, but works out hard every day, eats perfect, clean, vegan, whatever the perfect clean diet is for them, don't smoke, don't drink. I wonder who has more susceptibility to diseases and cancers and poor health, and which problems are each case more prone to have. Perfect eating, but not proper, half the amount of sleep, 4 or 5 hours a night, but you're taking care of physically, you're taking care of spiritually and nutrition, versus you sleep perfect. Maybe you won't be able to sleep perfect if you're eating that bad, but you sleep 8 hours a night, 9 hours a night, but you're eating horrible. Who has it worse off?
So firstly, I think you should be a sleep scientist because it's a fantastic question.
Good study.
It's a great study, and it's an incredibly complex but important study to do. The first answer is that no one has actually done that type of experiment. We've done a diluted version, a kind of diet version, a light LITE version of it, which is we look at sleep and we ask what is it in terms of the mortality risk and the health consequence risk when you're not getting sufficient sleep. And then we take all of those other factors that you've described, smoking history, diet history, mental health history, et cetera, and we add those as additional factors into the analysis, and we absorb them and control for them so that we can say, independent of those things, or in spite or in the face of those things, sleep still carries a significant vote in determining your mortality, your rate, your date of expiration, as it were. So that's the only evidence that we have right now where you can at least control for those, but we haven't done what you're describing, which is the much more elegant, smart thing to do, which is can we put them sort of almost in a Coke, Pepsi, Dr. Challenge kind of Dr. Pepper challenge phase and see which one wins out? Diet, exercise, or sleep, when those two other things are held constant, but you manipulate one of those, then hold the other two constant and manipulate one of. Lovely experiment, love to do it, but it's not been done.
God, so we don't know. What would your hypothesis be?
My suspicion is that sleep will still probably carry a larger influence than those two other factors. Now, there's a lot of assumptions I'm making there, but I'll give you another quick example. A study done back in the 1980s, which will probably never be repeated because of the moral and ethical issues, they took a group of rats, and what they found after sleep depriving the rats was that rats will die as quickly from sleep deprivation as they will from food deprivation. So sleep is that essential. Those rats were dying usually within 20 days. So sleep seems to have a deathly consequence to it. What was also fascinating, however, is that they then, and maybe I'll back up a little bit, human beings and most mammalian species will have two main types of sleep, what we call non-rapid eye movement sleep or non-REM sleep, and rapid eye movement sleep or dream sleep. And what they found was that total sleep deprivation will absolutely kill a rat. If you just selectively deprive the rat of either deep non-REM sleep or REM sleep or dream sleep, they found that the rats would still die of either one of those two. So both of those types of sleep are essential. But rats were dying almost as quickly from dream sleep deprivation as they would from total deprivation. Well, they died within about 40 days, whilst the rats who were deprived of deep non-REM sleep, they died after about 60 days. So, we can almost then, not that I would wish to, pit the different types of sleep head to head and ask, which is more important? Now, I should say all stages of sleep are critical. That's probably one of the biggest messages that we've learned. Different types of sleep do different things for your brain and your body at different times of night. All of them are important. But it seems as though if you want to ask the question of death risk, dream sleep may be more important than deep sleep on the consequence basis of how quickly you die. But you need all of them. Bad things happen when you don't get any one of them.
Gotcha. Can you talk about dreams and the importance of dreams?
Yeah, we've done quite a lot of work in this area, and the belief maybe 20 or 30 years ago was that dreams were just an epiphenomenon. They were just a byproduct. And so the analogy would be, think of the light bulbs that I think I can see behind you in that lovely background. When you create this apparatus called a light bulb, to produce this thing called light, in the same way that the brain has been created to produce this thing called dream sleep, called REM sleep. When you create light in that way with the light bulb, you also produce this thing called heat. It was never the purpose of the light bulb. It's just what happens when you create light in that way. And the belief was the same thing for dreaming, that when you create this thing called REM sleep, which serves lots of different functions, one of the conscious spin-offs, one of the byproducts, is this thing called dreaming. And that never made sense to me for the simple reason, which is this. When we are dreaming, it is more consciously, energetically demanding than not dreaming, is my assumption from a brain-based perspective. And any time Mother Nature burns the most valuable unit in your body, which is called an ATP molecule, an energy molecule, then it usually has some evolutionary advantage to it. In other words, if dreaming is metabolically more active, and you could have REM sleep without dreaming, but she still added dreaming atop of REM sleep, then it must serve some benefit. And we've now discovered that it serves at least two vital functions.
Really?
The first is that dream sleep provides a form of almost overnight therapy. That dream sleep is emotional first aid.
Interesting.
And it's during dream sleep at night that your brain takes those difficult, emotionally charged experiences, sometimes even traumatic memories, and it acts like a nocturnal soothing balm. And it just takes the sharp edges off those painful, difficult experiences so that you come back the next day and you feel better about those experiences. And in that way, it's not time that heals all wounds. It's time during dream sleep that provides emotional convalescence, as it were. And it's not just dream sleep, it's also even what you dream about, not just that you dream. In other words, I'm talking about your dream content being important. Because there was a study done several years ago, and they looked at people going through a really tough time, a traumatic experience, such as a really painful and bitter divorce. And at the time when that was happening, they were recording their dreams. And then they tracked those individuals for a year. And 1 year later, about half of them had clinical resolution to their depression, and the other half did not. And then they went back and they separated the dreams of those two different groups. And what they found is that those people who were dreaming, but not dreaming about the emotional events themselves, they didn't get clinical resolution 1 year later. Those people who were dreaming, but dreaming of the event, they got the clinical resolution. So in other words, dreaming is necessary, but it's not sufficient. You need to be dreaming of what those events are to process those.
How do we influence dreaming what we want to dream? and not nightmares.
That's right. Yeah. Well, this moves us into the territory of what we call lucid dreaming.
Yes.
And for most people, lucid dreaming from within my field, within the scientific field, is actually a more simple definition. It's simply the moment that you become aware that you're dreaming.
That you're in the dream.
Whilst you're dreaming. Correct.
Does that exert more energy when having the dream exerts more energy? If you're conscious and aware while dreaming, is that another level of energy that you're exerting? Like,
gosh, you need to be a sleep scientist, Lewis. This is absolutely.
That's why I've got you on here.
You don't need me, actually. So the answer is in part yes, but for most people, though, lucid dreaming really means not only I'm aware that I'm dreaming, but now I can control what I'm dreaming about.
Do you often have lucid dreaming?
Do we often as a group?
You individually?
No, I've only experienced lucid dreaming probably 6 or 7 times, and it's great when it happens. But right now we know, based on the population statistics, about 80% of the population does not lucid dream. 20% of the population does lucid dream, which then brings us on or back to your astute question, which is, can we control our dreams, and is that a good thing? To gain lucidity and to gain control and to give over the driving seat to me, the individual, rather than to Mother Nature's blueprint that she's worked out. And I can play both sides of the theory equation here. On one side, I would say, if lucid dreaming was so beneficial to you as a human being, as an organism, then many more people would be natural lucid dreamers than there are now. That statistic would be reversed, if anything.
Well, I mean, if sleeping an extra couple hours a night is more beneficial, which it is, then more people would also be sleeping more.
Well, that's the hard part, is that with lucid dreaming, it's very difficult to control. But to choose not to sleep, that's unfortunately very easy to control. Or society.
Difficult for a lot of people think it's difficult.
Well, we'll come back to it. I mean, there's really two separate things with insufficient sleep. There is you either not giving yourself the opportunity to sleep, or society not giving you the opportunity to sleep, despite you being able to sleep very well.
Right.
Versus you giving yourself plenty of opportunity to sleep, but just because you have a sleep disorder or you have sleep issues, you cannot generate the sleep. So the difference is opportunity is present, but you can't create the sleep, versus you can create the sleep, but you don't have the opportunity to do so. Sure. And those two things are quite different. But from the lucid dreaming perspective, I could come back and argue the other side, which is to say, my assumption there, the belief that Mother Nature would have had us all doing it if it was good, makes the wrong conclusion that we've stopped evolving. In other words, what if that 20% of the hominid population who are lucid dreaming is the next wave of evolution? They are the superhumans who will come next and succeed people like me who aren't natural lucid dreamers. So I can play both sides of it.
Interesting. Is there a way to train your mind and body in order to lucid dream more?
There have been some attempts. So there's a scientist called Stephen LaBerge who actually has an Institute of Lucidity. And he's got different courses and classes. How effective they are, it's a little bit unclear. And there are some simple techniques where you can, firstly, before you go to bed at night, and it sounds hokey and strange, is just repeat like a mantra to yourself, I am going to try and become conscious in my dream. I'm going to try and become conscious. And then you can do virtual reality testing in the dream, and you can do this when you're awake. So right now, I am looking at my laptop, and, if it's a physical entity and I'm in the real world and I'm awake, if I were to tap my screen, I can feel it physically. And you can go around and keep reminding yourself, I can go over to the light switch and turn it on, turn it off. Do I have voluntary control of what's going on in my environment? Because often you don't have in your dreams. And then by doing that in your waking day, you can try to train yourself to do that during your sleeping, dreaming life. And at that point, when you flick the light switch and it doesn't change anything, or you tap the screen of your laptop and your hand goes completely through it, then you think, oh, hang on a second, this isn't waking, this is clearly a dream. So there's different ways that you can test the reality of waking life versus dreaming life and adopt that mindset. The other thing is just to simply start trying to remember your dreams some more. So in the morning, when you wake up, that's the first step towards a path of lucidity. Don't jump out of bed and sort of just close your eyes and try and remember your dream. Instead, wake up and then keep your eyes closed and don't try to write the dream down. Don't try to dictate it. Just rehearse the dream. Because dreams have this funny nature to them where as soon as we wake up, they almost evaporate so quickly from our brain. And
so if you don't feel it right then, in moments or minutes, it's going to be gone.
It's going to be gone. So just wait there and try to crystallize it. Try to set the dream in amber by sort of, going over it and rehearsing it in your mind, build that picture, build the memory, ingrain the memory, and then pick up your pad of paper and your pencil next to you on the bedside and write it down. And gradually, as you start to remember more of your dreams, there is some evidence that can also increase the probability of lucidity. But in truth, I'm not really I don't know anyone who's truly an expert in being able to, increase the frequency with which you can lucid dream from a scientific perspective. There's lots of people out there who claim,
Sure.
I've got this course that you can do, and but the science doesn't support it that well. But the science now has proven without a shadow of a doubt, by the way, that there is a thing called lucid dreaming. We used to think it was a charlatan science, that it wasn't real. And we can go into the details as how you prove it, but it has been proven lots of different ways. Yeah.
And what is do we have any research on what lucid dreaming does for healing the body or hurting the body or the brain?
We haven't found evidence that it either hurts or helps right now. All we have is evidence understanding what happens when you become lucid as a dreamer. And this comes back to what you were asking about, which is there an additional metabolic consequence of going into lucid dreaming? One of the fascinating things when we go into dream sleep, well, there are many, but I'll give you just two. The first is that when you go into dream sleep, your brain paralyzes your body. You are utterly incarcerated in physical lockdown. And the reason is very simple. Your brain paralyzes your body so the mind can dream safely, so that you don't act out your dreams.
So you don't go move your body and
Correct. And so what we know is that the mechanisms that control REM sleep and non-REM sleep start deep down within the brain, in fact, in the brainstem. So if you were to take a fruit, like a pear, and you were to turn it upside down, it's that sort of, thin end and the stem of the pear. That's your brainstem. It's there where the principal battle for non-REM and REM sleep plays out across the night to create the 90-minute cycle of non-REM to REM sleep in humans. But as it's expressed upstairs into your brain during REM sleep, which activates lots of brain areas, but also deactivates them. There's a separate signal sent south of your neck, right down into your spinal cord, which paralyzes what we call the alpha motor neurons, which is all of your voluntary skeletal muscles. Now, that fortunately means that your involuntary muscles, things like your heart and your respiration,
keep going.
Don't worry, they keep going. Otherwise, we would have been popped out the gene pool together very quickly, if not. But your voluntary muscles, those are paralyzed. The second interesting feature, coming back to lucid dreaming, though, is that many parts of your brain, when you dream, light up. The visual areas at the back of the brain, the motor strip areas across the top of the brain, the emotional centers, and the memory centers. All of these things light up. And some of them, in fact, are up to 30% more active when you're in dream sleep than when you're awake, which in some ways is fascinating. But the one part of your brain that goes in the opposite direction is something called your prefrontal cortex. And this is sort of, it's like the CEO of the brain. It's very good at making high-level, top-down executive control decisions and communication. That part of the brain, as we go into dream sleep, is actively inhibited. So your rational, logical brain is shut down, and all of these emotional and memory centers light up. No wonder dreams are bizarre, illogical, hyper-associative, filled with memories, filled with visual aspects, often have kinesthetic aspects to them. But what we've realized is that the difference between dreaming and lucid dreaming is that that prefrontal cortex part of the brain actually comes back online as we become lucid. In other words, as we gain volitional control over what we dream, the prefrontal cortex seems to be coming back online, gifting you that volition to do what you wish in your dreams.
I've had, maybe a handful of times where I've had this dream where I wake up, my eyes are still asleep, but I'm awake. And then I open my eyes, but I feel paralyzed. And I feel like I'm screaming, yet nothing's coming out. And I can't move my arms, and I'm like, am I paralyzed? And then eventually, like, something comes out of my mouth, and I can move. But it always feels very weird. It's like paralysis. I don't know if that's...
And what it's called is sleep paralysis. It's a very well-known thing. And normally what happens to all of us so REM sleep and non-REM sleep, as I said, will go in this 90-minute cycle. But what's interesting is that in the first half of the night, that's when you get most of your deep non-REM sleep, and you don't get very much REM sleep. In the second half of the night, that's when the seesaw balance shifts, and now you get much more of your dream sleep, in those last few hours especially. And normally, as we're waking up out of sleep, and therefore typically REM sleep, and therefore typically dreaming, the brain has this beautiful synchrony, this lockstep of increasing consciousness into wakefulness and increasing release of that brain-body paralysis. So that as you are regaining waking mental life, your body is released from its physical lockdown, from physical incarceration. However, there are times when one leads too far in front of the other, and it's called sleep paralysis, and you've experienced it. I've experienced it too. It can often happen when we're under levels of high stress or we're typically sleep deprived. And at that point, you become a pseudo-aware. You're sort of in this mixed state of consciousness. You're between the worlds of wake and sleep, as it were. But your body is still in the paralysis. So you can't lift your eyelids. Why? Voluntary skeletal muscles. You can't shout out. Why? Voluntary skeletal muscles. And it's often paired with a sense, understandably so, of dread and fear and a presence of someone else being there. And it turns out that this phenomenon called sleep paralysis accurately explains most, if not all, of so-called alien abductions. Because when was the last time you heard on the news an alien abduction story that happened in the middle of the day? And, people were outside at lunchtime with friends at work. They're all eating their sandwiches. And then all of a sudden they heard this sound, whoosh. And it's like, my goodness, did you see that? Tommy was just abducted by alien. It never happens like that. It's usually at night. You're usually by yourself. You describe a presence or a sense in the room. You say that they injected you with some kind of paralyzing agent. You tried to fight back, but you couldn't. It's sleep paralysis.
Sleep paralysis, yeah.
Right. Now, by the way, it's not necessarily something to be worried about if you have it. It seems to be somewhat normal. About 25% of the population will experience it. In other words, it's as common as hiccups. But just be aware that there's nothing wrong with you, and it's not that you're being visited by anything strange, or there have been some kind of worries in religious sort of domains that you require some kind of, exorcism, or there's sort of a long history of that in the past. We understand the biology. It's a basic science fact, and it's largely normal. So
when someone experiences it, what should they do? Just try to maintain calm and just wait for the body to wake up naturally. And
that's exactly right. You will come out of it, and try to, if you can, having heard this, understand what's going on. Sometimes even I don't recognize what's going on when it's going on, despite knowing what I know. But gradually I get to the place where I realize what's happening, and then I just relax and I say, I'm just going to give it time, and I may fall back asleep, or I may continue with my, runway jet propulsion, and I hit escape velocity of both consciousness and physical paralysis, and it'll be just fine. But it's very disconcerting.
For me, the keystone habit, that I changed and everything else became easier was sleep. I went from 4 to 5 hours to 8 hours, 95% of the time. I'm a work in progress. I'm not perfect.
Yeah.
And I suddenly sort of started looking around and seeing that I was not alone, that millions of people were burnt out.
Yeah.
And that we live in a culture which is fueled by burnout. And it's kind of amazing because the new science now is so conclusive that sleep is a performance enhancer, that everything in our lives gets better, our productivity, our health, our relationships, our happiness.
Yeah.
So why is it so hard for us to actually do something that is free and available to us? And I think that's partly because we've created this culture, mostly created by you guys, not you personally, Luis, but men, that basically wears this sleep deprivation like a badge of honor.
Yeah.
Like I'm too busy and too important to sleep, or I'll sleep when I'm dead, or you snooze, you lose, all these things.
Right.
And basically they're all wrong.
Yeah. It's kind of interesting. It's kind of like the food industry in a sense where they told us to, the breads and grains and milks and all these things were actually good for us. But now the science is like, well, actually, that's what's causing all the cancer or making you exhausted. It's like the gluten, the dairy, or whatever. So it's kind of like we have to relearn.
And even if you go further back, it's kind of amazing to look at some of the ads in the 1950s by doctors selling cigarettes.
Right, of course.
And you had literally doctors in white coats saying,
crazy.
Menthol cigarettes, refresh your throat,
That's crazy.
give you cancer. But so yes, it's like we often live under false assumptions.
Yes.
Modern science has disproven them. This has been the golden age of scientific findings around sleep.
Right.
And it's very recent. The first scientific sleep center was founded in 1970 at Stanford, and now there are 2,500
sleep centers. What's a sleep center?
Basically, they study different aspects of sleep. What happens to the brain? At Stanford, Sherry Ma studied sports and sleep, and she was the one who became the pioneer of proving that sleep was a legal performance enhancer without negative side effects.
Exactly.
Yes.
Wow.
And so you have Andre Iguodala, for example, who had such a fantastic year despite his injury.
Can I just see a photo with you and him?
Yes. I interviewed him at Stanford, the Golden State Warriors MVP.
Yeah.
Absolutely considers his sleep what got him the MVP title.
Right.
And he's kind of so disciplined about it. I talked to his wife too, the getting his 8 hours, no screens or TV in the bedroom, temperature at 67 degrees, everything dark, all the things that I include in the book, all the tips and techniques of how to get a great night's sleep. And he's practicing, and when he's on the road, making sure that he has as many of these things available to him,
Right.
so that he can actually get the restorative sleep that makes him better on the court.
What's the science behind recovering the muscles with whatever it is, 7 or 8 hours of sleep with a cool temperature, the blackout, calming the mind? What's the science behind that? What do doctors or scientists say about how it actually enhances the muscles or the heart or the brain or all the things?
Well, it enhances everything, both the physical body that needs that recovery time. In fact, the more intensely you work out, the more essential the recovery time is for the body.
Yes.
But also, what happens to the brain? Because as you know, being an athlete yourself, winning is not just a function of your muscles, it's also a function of your brain. And I talk in the book about how if you miss a shot or you make a mistake, which every athlete does in the course of a game, if you actually keep replaying that in your head while the game is going on, that's a recipe for disaster. And if you're sleep deprived, you are more likely to dwell on your failures, to dwell on your fears and anxieties. I mean, whether you're an athlete or a busy mom, you're more likely to be irritable and cranky, and all the things that make life much harder are aggravated when you're sleep deprived.
Yeah, it has a lot to do with meditation too. When we don't meditate and we're not being mindful, we are more irritated, we're more stressed out,
Absolutely.
We're not recovering, we're not relaxing the mind and the body. I think sleep and meditation go hand in hand. Do you meditate as well yourself?
I do meditate, yes. Okay. And I love my meditation.
Yeah.
But the thing about sleep is, whether you meditate or not, whether you work out or not, everybody has to sleep.
Right, exactly.
So everybody has a relationship with sleep. So the question is, how can we make this relationship the best it can be so that every other aspect of our life is enhanced?
Do you feel like... in 2005 to 2007, you said you started to realize that you were like crashing and all these things were happening.
Well, I didn't actually realize it until I collapsed.
Until you collapsed, 2007, right?
That's what is so interesting.
How many years were you kind of living this lifestyle of not paying attention to your sleep?
Well, it would come and go.
Okay.
I started, as I write in the book, about how I was brought up by a mother who revered sleep in a one-bedroom apartment.
Right.
In Athens, Greece.
She wanted to sleep all the time.
No, not at all. She just brought us up believing that if we get enough sleep, we're going to be better at school.
Okay.
And we're going to be happier.
Right.
And in fact, she kind of knew that because we all wanted to maintain our weight or lose weight, depending on the time, this was a great way to do that. She wasn't a scientist, but the modern science now validates that if you want to lose weight,
sleep more.
Sleep enough. It's not about more.
Gotcha.
Actually, what is interesting, modern science tells us you cannot oversleep unless you're a narcoleptic or suffering from severe depression. If you're just going on about your life, your body wakes you up when it's fully recharged.
So you can't oversleep. If you oversleep, does it hurt you if you get 12 hours of sleep?
No, if you get 12 hours of sleep, you're probably making up some sleep deficit.
Gotcha. Okay.
Once you've paid your sleep deficit and you are in a regular routine, your body will naturally wake you up.
Gotcha. Okay. Interesting. So your mom kind of had this intuition.
So my mom had that intuition and brought us up like that. But then when I went to England to get my degree and then to New York, I just bought into the prevailing culture, which was that...
the driven mindset.
Yes, that if you're going to succeed, then you need to sacrifice sleep. And really now for me, it's a little bit like choosing to get to your destination in a broken down truck, or a gas guzzling car, instead of a Tesla.
Teslas run so smooth.
I mean, when you are fully recharged, it's like there you are in your Tesla, going to your destination faster, more efficiently, and also enjoying the journey.
Yeah.
So that's why I've become such a sleep evangelist. And this crusade that we've launched The book is one part of it, but we're taking the book and the sleep revolution to 100 colleges to convince millennials of the importance of sleep.
Are you seeing that a lot of millennials are not sleeping, that they still have this pull all-nighter mentality like in college, for finals and tests?
Absolutely.
Is that happening still?
It's happening, and with huge and dangerous consequences. And that's what I structured the book. So you start with the crisis and give people an overview of how dangerous sleep deprivation is, how prevalent it is, and how it's also at the heart of a lot of mental health issues.
Really?
Like people who are depressed or anxious. At the heart of it is sleep deprivation.
So they're linking the diseases that we're having, just the mental, emotional
The
diseases?
mental and the physical. Obviously, sleep deprivation is directly linked to obesity, diabetes, hypertension and heart disease, even cancer, and definitely Alzheimer's.
Really?
Because when we sleep is the time when our brain washes away, the toxins that have built during the day.
Interesting. Is it more powerful to have vivid dreams or to not dream at all? Is there a difference? Does it matter?
Much more powerful, obviously, to remember your dreams because it means you're getting enough sleep.
If you remember them.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you are sleep deprived, you're much less likely to remember your dreams.
Really?
And I have a whole section on dreams, and dreams are a great source of insights. A lot of inventors have come up with their inventions in dreams.
Really?
Larry Page came up with the idea for Google
In a dream?
in a dream.
Wow. Okay.
Paul McCartney came up with Let It Be in a dream. All the lyrics were written in the dream.
Interesting.
So whatever it is you're doing,
But you're saying if we're not sleeping well, then we're not going to have dreams we can remember, or maybe there'll be more nightmares than dreams.
well, you're much less likely to remember them
Gotcha.
if you're not sleeping well.
And do we know, and maybe we're not aware of this, but do we know about why we have nightmares and why we have positive dreams? Or
Basically, dreaming is a time when we either process a lot of the incomplete emotions of the day, or we process our anxieties about the future, or they're more insightful dreams that tap into our wisdom. So it depends, it's the whole gamut. That's what I love about my sleep time now, that I go to sleep and I don't know what the movie is going to be tonight.
Right, exactly.
But it's a little bit like rekindling the romance with sleep. But I wanted first to convince people of why it is important.
Right.
I think we're so data driven,
Right.
and the science chapter gives you all the data you want to really believe it's important. And after you believe it's important, and after we go through the history chapter that shows you why we started devaluing sleep in the first industrial revolution, when we thought human beings could be like machines and minimize downtime, then you have the second half of the book, which is all about how to. But you first have to how to maximize your performance, how to maximize your sleep. And there are tons of tips.
Right, resources.
Exactly. But for me, the key, the most important thing, if you're going to do one thing, it's to turn off all your devices.
Yeah.
Start with 5 minutes before you're going to turn off the lights. Just have a little demarcation line between your day life and your sleep.
Right. Why is that important to turn off the screens and TVs?
Because otherwise what happens is that our bodies may be exhausted, but our minds remain in a stimulated mode. Blue light stimulates the brain.
Yeah.
But also beyond the blue light, it's just that we haven't given our brain some opportunity to power down.
Yeah.
And that's what wakes people up in the middle of the night. Even if they go to sleep, because they're physically exhausted, their brains wake them up with whatever it is they haven't processed, all the mind chatter.
Yeah.
So I think what is key is to have a little transition to sleep. And it can be a really simple and short transition. Mine is about 30 minutes now, but I believe in microscopic steps. You know how it is. You build habits with very small
Don't try to do this big jump at the
changes.
same
Don't try
day.
to make the big jump. Just little things that you can stick to. And then little by little, the kind of person that you become when you are fully recharged becomes like a magnet.
I'm not a nutritionist or nutrition expert, but what I've found works for me personally is I fast until about noon-ish each day, and then my lunch is low carb, so I tend to eat some grass-fed meat, some veggies, maybe some starches if I trained, and a piece of fruit. If I didn't, I don't. And then I also have an afternoon snack, but then in the evening, my meals tend to be relatively low in meat and protein and higher in starches, which activate the tryptophan system and the serotonin system, which makes it easier to fall asleep. You can repack glycogen during the night so you can do muscular work the next day, training of any kind, but also thinking. Your brain uses glucose. So at night, I tend to eat pastas and vegetables and rice and risottos and things like that, not in huge volumes, but I tend to eat less protein. It's not that I don't eat any, but I don't tend to eat big steaks right before going to sleep. Again, 80-20, 80% of the time. So certain foods stimulate the neurotransmitter pathways like serotonin that facilitate the transition to sleep. Now, what could you take? Well, some people will drink chamomile tea. Chamomile tea is enriched in something called apigenin. Apigenin I take it in supplement form, 50 milligrams of apigenin, but it's really just chamomile extract. And it tends to make you a little drowsy. And many people experience excellent sleep when they take apigenin, and normally they struggle with it. Again, with supplements, I don't have a relationship to an apigenin company or anything like that. I want to be clear. And also supplements, check with your doctor, of course, all that. But the one thing I don't recommend is that people take melatonin.
Don't take melatonin.
I am not a fan of melatonin for the following reasons. First of all, melatonin does many more things besides just cause the transition to sleep. It also is involved in regulating some of the other hormones like testosterone, estrogen, and so on. Most of those studies are animal studies, but some of the data in humans indicate that as well. In kids, melatonin is one of the hormones responsible for suppressing puberty, and then melatonin rhythms change, and then puberty happens. So, if your kid has already been taking melatonin, I wouldn't be alarmed, but just be aware. And if you talk to your physician, most physicians aren't really aware of this. I would talk to an endocrinologist, frankly. Also, Matt Walker would also support this statement because I'm lifting it from him. So, which is that most melatonin supplements contain anywhere from 15% of what's listed on the bottle to 300% of what's listed on the bottle. The regulation of supplements is an issue. Even from a trusted brand, if you were to take, say, 3 milligrams or 6 milligrams of melatonin, it's a pretty standard dose out there, you are taking supraphysiological levels of melatonin. Your system does not see those levels of melatonin. So
chamomile tea is okay.
Chamomile tea or apigenin, it's a little hard to find, but apigenin is it's chamomile extract, essentially. There are a few other things. Again, margins for safety will depend. Magnesium threonate, which is THREONATE, threonate, 140 milligrams or so of magnesium threonate. Again, you could just shop for cost. I don't want to name brands, even though my podcast is associated with one. I don't want this to become about that. The magnesium threonate, many people take in 30 to 60 minutes before sleep with apigenin. Many people find great benefit.
Yes.
I am not a fan of taking serotonin or serotonin precursors, 5-HTP, L-tryptophan prior to sleep for the following reason. The architecture of sleep, as Matt probably discussed here, I need to watch that episode. He's so good. Includes a lot of slow wave sleep early in the night, repair and recovery of motor circuits in the brain, and muscular tissue and connective tissue that might have been worked with or damaged during the day. And the second half of sleep tends to be enriched in so-called REM sleep, rapid eye movement sleep, more dreams that are very intense, etc.
Right.
That architecture is exquisitely controlled by levels of serotonin at one point and not having serotonin at others, having acetylcholine release being very tuned to particular times in the night. When you start messing with the serotonin system, you disrupt that. So my experience with 5-HTP, I took it to go to sleep, or L-tryptophan, is I fall asleep like I got clubbed over the head by a grizzly bear, but then I wake up an hour and a half later and I cannot fall asleep. For me, for 2 days.
Wow.
Very intense. Now, I'm pretty sensitive to these things, but that's why I'm not a fan of those, and I rely on magnesium threonate, apigenin, and some people also take theanine, but for the time being, I think magnesium threonate and apigenin or chamomile are great. If people don't want to take supplements, chamomile tea is a terrific mild sedative to just kind of turn off some of that thinking.
Relax. Okay. And what about working out and sleep?
Okay.
Should you work out in the morning, afternoon, night? How does that affect the sleep when you work out and how you work out?
Yeah, well, I want to be fair to the fact that people have different schedules and different constraints, and that work, getting that 150 to 180 minutes of zone 2 cardio per week is essential. People should be doing some resistance training regardless of goals, or in order to maintain muscle, because it's so important to avoid injury and maintain metabolism, etc. So you need to get it in somehow, but you then have to ask yourself what's happening around that workout. So are you going into a brightly lit gym at 11 o'clock at night and blasting music, and are you drinking 3 espresso or an energy drink before you go? You're going to be awake. You're going to have a hard time going to sleep. It's not just the workout, it's the context around the workout.
Yes.
My preference is always to work out as early in the day as possible. That's my preference. I don't always accomplish that. People should also know that if you work out at the same time for 3 or 4 days, your body builds in an anticipatory circuit. You will feel an energy increase a few minutes before that workout. So if you are working out at 10 p.m. at night and you're finding it hard to go to sleep, if you can shift that workout earlier in the day, you will soon become a morning person. You won't. It might not be this as natural as somebody who naturally wakes up at 4:30 or 5 in the morning, but let's say you want to get on an earlier schedule, you want to get that morning light, but also force yourself to work out in the morning. And then by the second or third day of doing that, you will start to feel more alert as you arrive to the workout, because there are these anticipatory circuits.
That's cool.
Working out late at night, some people say cardio okay, but not weight. Some people say, I think it's highly individual. And I don't think there's ever been a really good study addressing that. Regularity is key. I think for me, the best times to work out are 3 hours after waking up, 11 hours after waking up, just based on body temperature rhythms, or immediately, like get up and just put the shoes on and just go. And I don't tend to do that last thing very often these days. I tend to wake up and move through the morning a little bit like a lazy bear, get the sunlight, and then wait for my caffeine. But every time I do that early morning workout, I feel much better and more alert all day.
And you fall asleep probably easily.
And I fall asleep much more easily. And the other thing you can do to fall asleep is, this might seem a little counterintuitive. I said that you need to lower your body temperature by 1 to 3 degrees. You can take a hot shower or do a sauna, which you would think, well, it heats you up. But when you actually heat the surface of the body, your brain cools off your core body temperature, unless you stay in that heat for a very long time. So you take a brief, I don't want to say how long people should shower. Get in the sauna or whatnot, and then, or a hot shower, and then maybe rinse off with some cool water for, not cold, but cool water, lukewarm water, for 10 seconds, and dry off and get into bed. Your body temperature will drop. If you get into an ice bath or a cold shower,
you'll stay awake.
It's very jolting. So I don't recommend people do that late in the day unless they want to be awake for some reason at night. But the other thing is, when this is a little counterintuitive, but my colleague at Stanford, Craig Heller, works on thermal regulation. If you want to cool down and you put a cold towel or ice around your neck, you're cooling the surface of the body just like you would put a cold pack on a thermostat. What's going to happen? Your brain's going to start to heat you up. So I would avoid cold exposure right before sleep, especially if it's very stimulating, like to the point cold enough that you get that adrenaline bump.
So cold air is key to drop the temperature down.
Keeping the room cool.
Cool.
Yeah, but you don't
not
want
like
that
an
really,
ice box where you're shivering.
Exactly, the acute cold exposure, as we call it, of an ice bath or something. Rather, a sauna, or a lot of people don't have access to sauna, maybe a warm or hot shower before sleep. But people tend to be very specific about this too. Some people like to shower in the morning, some people in the evening. I like to shower whenever I have an opportunity to shower.
Right.
You know, generally I try and shower after I work out because if I don't, everyone suffers.
Right.
But I think that if people don't have access to a sauna, that hot shower or warm shower before sleep can be very beneficial because the body will naturally start to dump heat and cool off as you get into bed.
Gotcha.
And then in terms of the actual architecture of sleep and dreams, with dreams, you know, that dreams in the beginning of the night tend to be kind of mundane and seem kind of ordinary, and the dreams toward morning tend to be more intense. This is
You wake up and you remember like what just happened.
That's right.
Not what happened in hours before.
Right. And the early part of the night, in very broad strokes, the early part of the night tends to be when we release growth hormone, when we tend to repair motor circuits and damaged tissues. And there's a real lack of emotional context to those dreams. Now, the dreams toward morning tend to have much more emotional enrichment and be very intense. Often if people see visual hallucinations, that's in the so-called REM sleep dreams.
Why is that?
It's interesting. Great question. Well, two things. You're also paralyzed during REM sleep. You can breathe, but you cannot move. And there's this interesting thing that happens in sleep where when we are in REM, rapid eye movement sleep, we have high degree of emotionality of dreams, but we are unable to release adrenaline. This is very much like trauma treatment, where there's a desensitization. You're coupling an intense experience to an inability for your body to move or to have a reaction to that. Now, if you suddenly wake up, which I often do, you'll notice that the adrenaline kicks in. But this is kind of like therapy in your sleep or trauma release in your sleep. And if you deprive people selectively of this rapid eye movement sleep, a number of bad things happen. But one of the primary things that happens that's bad is that when you don't get enough REM sleep, you are more emotionally labile during the day. Little things bother you more. You feel more irritable. Yeah, anytime I see a comment on Instagram to me or anyone else and someone seems kind of prickly, like, well, I always just think to myself, I'm not getting enough REM sleep.
Wow.
Yeah, or I tell myself that because I want to have some empathy for them. They're just not neurologically up to snuff, meaning they're not working as well as they could. Now, there are other reasons why people can be combative, but I think lack of REM sleep is one of the main reasons that we feel irritable, easily set off. There are a number of very powerful things that happen in REM sleep that we should all be seeking. So if you wake up in the middle of the night, you really do want to try and get back to sleep. And then as the night goes on, you're spending a greater proportion, of your sleep in that rapid eye movement sleep. And those are when you have your very rich dreams, and when you wake up, oftentimes spending some time with a pad and paper, maybe while you're getting your outdoor sunlight, is a great thing because you'll remember components of your dreams. The meaning of dreams has been debated for thousands of years. I would say, and I think Matt Walker would agree that some dreams do have tremendous significance, others do not. There seems to be a very powerful effect of having a dream that makes people want to tell someone else their dream. Like we have this need, I think we just have this need to want to put structure on something that seems very unstructured. It is a way, in a sense, when we're dreaming, we're crazy. Like space and time are completely fluid. Anything could happen. And when we have a dream that feels powerful to us, I think we understandably want to put some sort of interpretation on it.
Meaning behind it.
Yeah. I've had great insights through dreams. I've also had a lot of dreams that got me nothing. I wake up in the middle of the night and I tend to write things down that come to mind. I achieve my greatest clarity for kind of psychological and relational things when I wake up first. Immediately I'll have a solution in my head, or I'll think the other day this happened. I've been, as we were talking about before the recording, I've been working through a very complex set of personal interactions. And these are not traumatic or anything like that, but I've been working with somebody to try and resolve a really hard problem that we have, and we were both committed to solving this problem. And I'll chip away at this, and they are much smarter than I am. So I'm struggling, and then I will go to sleep, and I'll wake up at 3 a.m, and boom, the answer, at least to whatever it is that I'm trying to resolve, is right there. And I think it's because in sleep, you're getting those repeats of the different circuits. You're rehearsing things you learned during the day. You're dumping the emotional load through this trauma release type mechanism of REM sleep. And then answers just kind of geyser up to the top. But again, I'm speculating. What we do know at the neural level is that there's a replay of the neurons that were active during the day in sleep, but at much more rapid rates.
A lot of stuff we won't remember, is what you're saying.
Much of sleep is there. Much of the dreaming and sleep is designed to get you to forget things that are meaningless.
What is happening to the brain as you're sleeping? Is it just connecting neurons? Is it flushing? Is it, creating these images for you to remember? What's the actual mechanics of it?
Yeah, so several things are happening. One is this glymphatic washout. Yeah. There's this literally like a spin cycle on the brain of dumping all the junk.
That's why you want
your feet
up.
elevated,
okay.
Right? That's why you want your sleep. That's why you want your feet elevated. The glymphatic washout is one. The other is adenosine, this molecule that accumulates the longer that we are awake. That actually gets reduced during sleep so that we can wake up feeling rested. Okay. In other words, if you've been up for a day and a half, you've got tons of adenosine in your system. Caffeine of any kind is blocks adenosine function. I want to be careful because it's not actually an antagonist. It's a competitive agonist for the aficionados. But you're basically reducing adenosine function with caffeine. When you sleep, you reduce adenosine, which is why I delay my caffeine 90 to 120 minutes after waking up.
Yeah.
So you've got adenosine getting pushed back down. You've got the glymphatic system washout. You have reordering of neurons and creation of new connections so that what you couldn't do previously, you can do the next day and the next day.
Right.
You're learning. The trigger for learning occurs during wakefulness through focused, alert, motivated states. The actual rewiring of neurons, meaning the changes in the connections, occurs during sleep, in particular, deep sleep. So a lot's happening in there. And during rapid eye movement sleep, the brain is incredibly metabolically active.
Right.
It's just that the body is paralyzed. And some people experience this invasion of that sleep paralysis into the wakeful period. It's really scary. I've had this happen. You wake up and you're still totally paralyzed, and then you jolt out. Now,
terrifying. You can't move. Yeah. I feel like I'm screaming, but nothing's coming out.
It's really terrifying.
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 That's called what? Sleep paralysis?
Yes, that, essentially. But that's an invasion of sleep paralysis into the waking period.
It's like wake paralysis, yeah.
And I know you're not a pot smoker, but many pot smokers experience that more often than non-pot smokers for reasons that probably relate to the serotonin system and the so-called atonia, the inability to move during sleep. So there's that. What else happens during sleep? Well, there's all sorts of interesting resetting of the digestive system, the microbiome.
Are your muscles growing or?
Muscle growth probably occurs throughout the 24-hour cycle, but a lot of repair of muscles and triggering of muscle growth probably occur during sleep.
Sure.
He's passed now. He was 11 years old when I had to put him down, but I had this bulldog, Costello. He was a 90-pound English bulldog mastiff. And when he was a puppy, I would take a picture of him, and then the next day I'd take a picture of it when he was larger the next day.
That's
after
crazy.
sleep. Well, they're just growing at such a tremendous rate, right? And that's growth hormone. And during puberty, sometimes kids will be kind of locked up during sleep. You'll go in and see a kid sleeping. They'll be in some weird position. They'll get growing pains because actually the bones, it's a lot to orchestrate the growth of the bones and the connective tissue and the brain and all that. It's not always perfect. And so sometimes there's a few days where things are a little out of whack.
I remember for months my knees would hurt when I was a teenager.
Yeah, and kids, my dad used to come in and push my knees down because he was worried that something was going on. That's the growing. You're growing. I mean, you're growing.
The bones are like spreading, right?
That's right. They're psychological growing pains and they're physical growing pains. And in your case, there was a lot of growing.
A lot of physical growing.
I'm not short. I'm 6'1", but you're
6'4".
Yeah, you're a tower.
Maybe 6'5", maybe.
So,
but yeah. Wow.
So there's a lot of stuff going on in sleep.
And are you burning a lot of fat too during sleep?
Yeah, a lot of metabolism is happening during sleep. There's a beautiful paper that just came out. Gosh, I forget all the micro details, so I'm only going to say a little bit about it. But a lot of the removal of fat from the body from when we burn fat is actually done through the breath. We exhale. There's a carbon dioxide component.
Isn't that interesting? It's a sweat and the breath, right? And then what? Just
Not so much.
Sweat?
Not so much fecal elimination, but more that you're breathing out.
Breathing burns more fat than...
Well, no. Sorry, elimination of fat from the body, if it's going to occur. Because I have to be careful, because the nutrition crowd online, they have claws, pitchforks, and they like
come
to
after you.
and they're ready, fire, aim type trigger.
You
happy.
said this. Yeah.
Exactly. So I want to be very clear. I believe in calories in, calories out.
Yes.
As a basic principle. There are people out there arguing different, but basically, if you ingest more calories than you burn, you're going to gain weight. If you keep them more or less equal, you're going to maintain, and if you burn more than you ingest, you're going to lose weight.
Yeah.
Okay, whether or not you lose from muscle, fat, or other body compartments is a different story, but the utilization of fat as an energy source and the elimination of adipose tissue, of body fat, eventually boils down to something where, yes, indeed, you are exhaling the eventual molecules. Okay, but
that's crazy.
Among other, there are some other routes as well. I mean,
how much fat are we exhaling a week?
Well, it depends on whether or not you're in a caloric deficit or not.
If we're in a deficit, then we're exhaling that fat?
Essentially, but it's been broken down into a number of different metabolic components.
That's crazy.
It's really wild to think about. Well, if you think, and you might think, well, why not just remove it through the digestive tract? But it's part of a whole lipolysis, meaning the utilization of fat for energy, the lipolysis cycle and an energy cycle. If those of you that enjoyed or suffered through college or high school, the Krebs cycle and ATP production in the mitochondrial cells and so forth. That was a whole business there. Yeah. But so in sleep, this paper shows that, each stage of sleep is actually associated with a different mode of energy utilization and carbon dioxide offloading and so forth. Or in the last episode, we talked about ideally you are nose breathing during sleep. You are not mouth breathing. So some people actually will shut their mouth with a little bit of medical tape. Huge benefits to that for getting enhanced oxygenation of the brain and body. You do not want to have sleep apnea. Sleep apnea is associated with sexual side effects in men and women. It's associated with cardiac arrest. It's associated with a number of bad things. A lot of people who are carrying a lot of extra weight, who sleep on their back, or even just who are carrying a lot of extra weight, unfortunately, they have a buildup of carbon dioxide in their system at night, especially if they're mouth breathing, and they wake up not feeling rested. In all individuals, regardless of phenotype, as we say, their genotypes and their phenotypes, regardless of phenotype, the kind of droopiness and the bagging of the eyes that can occur from sleep apnea and the effects on. So become a nose breather. We talked about that in the last episode, how to become a nose breather, but you want to nose breathe during sleep if you can.
Yes.
And your partner will thank you too, because you're not snoring as much.
Do you nose breathe in sleep?
I think I do.
Yeah.
I think I do. I'm told I snore a little bit from time to time.
Right.
And, a lot of people, even people who aren't carrying a lot of fat, but people who are carrying a lot of muscle, who sleep on their back, oftentimes they're kind of suffocating during sleep. Every time I hear about a bodybuilder or a very large athlete dying, it's almost always a heart attack during sleep.
They're on their back.
Or their side, but they're asphyxiating, and there's a beautiful relationship between breathing and heart rate. Simply, when you inhale, your heart rate goes up, and when you exhale, your heart rate goes down.
Wow.
And this has to do with the movement of the diaphragm and the change of the shape of the heart and signals from the brain. I won't go into all that, but when you inhale, your heart rate speeds up, and when you exhale, it slows down, and that's respiratory sinus arrhythmia for the aficionados. So. You want to create an environment around your sleep where it's dim lights in the evening, you've had your meal, maybe a cup of chamomile tea towards sleep, maybe you use supplements, maybe you don't. You wake up, get sunlight in your eyes. This is the kind of landscape you want to create.
Sure.
Cool room. You want to avoid very stimulating stuff, conversations and activity, right before sleep.
Yeah.
Now, some stimulating activities before sleep, we won't go into details, have a rebound effect afterwards. Matthew Walker's actually talked about this, how certain types of activities cause a rebound in they're very...
So sexual activities.
Yes, I'm not trying to be vague here.
Yes. What does that do for sleep if you have sexual activities before sleep?
So sexual activity includes it's really remarkable at the level of autonomic nervous system. So sexual activity involves an increase at first in the so-called parasympathetic arm of the autonomic nervous system, the relaxation system. But then it involves increases in the sympathetic arm of the autonomic nervous system. And orgasm in men and women is actually purely driven by the sympathetic nervous system, the stress system. And then the post-coital period is when the parasympathetic nervous system kicks back on and there's a deep relaxation.
So is it good to have sexual activity before bed or not that good?
According to the architecture of what I just described, yes.
Yes, it's good?
Yes, it's good. Yes, it's good. Yes, it's good. It helps people sleep. And Matt, actually, when Matt Walker came on my podcast, we talked a little bit about some of the data on this. Now, even then, so there are all sorts of questions about this that are now coming out. Now, the interesting thing about studying sex in the laboratory is very hard to do, right? I mean, there are ethical reasons, there are complicated reasons, and good studies have to be done in laboratories or by self-report. And with self-report, people lie. Right? They make up stories in one direction or the other. They're doing more of what they would like to be, they're either reporting more of what they'd like to be reporting of or less of what they would like to be reporting less of. But doing those sorts of studies in the laboratory is very difficult. There are sleep laboratories, but it's not often that couples are coming in and staying in those sleep laboratories together, although that does happen from time to time. But yes, after sex, there's a rebound in the parasympathetic nervous system, which is a deeply relaxing component of the nervous system. And the reasons for that aren't clear. I mean, one idea is that it's designed to put people in close proximity, not just run off and look for another mate immediately, and to smell each other and pair bond through some of the pheromonal systems.
Powerful.
Yes, very powerful. An interesting form of pre-sleep, biology for sure, and one that, let's be fair, as we were talking about during the break, every species has two main goals: to protect its young and to make more of itself. And while not all sex is designed for reproduction or used for reproduction, I mean, the whole architecture of the reproductive axis, as we say, from brain down to genitals, is designed for that arc of parasympathetic, sympathetic, and then parasympathetic.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Oh, and the duration of that varies between individuals.
Okay.
That was a joke. Sorry.
Yeah. You got to go at least 10 minutes to get the full effects.
I'm not setting the parameters that people should or should not follow. That is not my domain.
This is powerful stuff, man. I'm so grateful for your wisdom, as always. Huberman Lab. Make sure you guys check out the podcast. One of the top podcasts in the world right now. It's incredible. People love the science. They love the neuroscience, what you're teaching over there. You got a lot of great stuff about brain states, around fear, courage, anxiety, calm, how we can better move into and out of them through visual cues, breath work, movement, supplementation, and all sorts of great stuff. Amazing research. HubermanLab.com. Huberman Lab everywhere on social media. You go live on Instagram. You post on the podcast every week. YouTube. Lots of great stuff. We were talking about this before, and I think this could be a good segue about sex at night. I want to do a whole another episode on relationships and neuroscience around relationships and intimacy. I think it'll be a fascinating conversation. Marriage, relationships, dating, all that. So if you guys want that conversation from Andrew, then leave a hashtag in the comments below, relationships. And we'll see on YouTube if how many people want to really see that information. And if you're on the podcast, just DM us or post us over on Instagram and tag us both if you want to learn more about the science and neuroscience behind relationships, intimacy, all that stuff. I think it'd be fascinating. Have you done an episode on this yet?
I have not, and I think that
powerful.
There's a lot of really great biology, both about sex and reproduction and about relationships, parent-child, couple relationships. The biology of breakups is really interesting.
Oh, that'd be huge.
And there's some really interesting data on, how relationships change over time according to changes in biology in individuals, because
my goodness,
we all change over time, and not necessarily for the worse. The data, just to throw out a little teaser, there's this idea that testosterone levels drop with age. The data on this say that there are people in their 70s who maintain testosterone levels, and this, men and women both have testosterone. It serves similar roles in both, although different at the level of the body, but at the level of the brain is what I'm referring to. That mimic the levels that were present in their 20s And so,
Really?
yeah, so it has a lot to do with how people
Sleep, probably.
sleep, how they certainly
Stress, the
their
relationships,
behavior,
everything.
but also there's a strong psychological component related to self-image that's super interesting. So we can talk about that as well.
I think everybody knows exercise is good for them. The question is how much? And it turns out that there's really no upper limit to the benefits you accrue from exercise. So I would say the first piece of advice I would give is however much you're exercising,